Hi, my name is Beth, and I am a programming and reference assistant for the St. Johns County Public Library System. I'd like to welcome you to the first in a series of videos I'm making this summer called In the Bubble with Beth, as a nod to life in quarantine and full of social distancing. So welcome, thanks for coming. So today I'm going to be talking to you about bone broth, and I'm going to walk you through the very simple steps to make bone broth in an Instant Pot. What is bone broth? Bone broth is essentially a nutritious broth that is made from simmering animal bones in a pot of water for an extended period of time. You can add vegetables like onions, carrots, celery, and herbs if you'd like. You don't have to. And you might be wondering now, what's the difference between a regular chicken broth or beef broth and bone broth? And the difference really comes down to the amount of time that bone broth is cooked and also the thickness of the broth. So whereas a typical chicken or beef or veal broth would be simmered on a stove for somewhere between 2 and 4 hours, bone broth is typically simmered on the stove anywhere between 24 and 36 hours. So quite a bit of a difference in the amount of time that it's cooked. Something nice to know is that you essentially cannot overcook bone broth, because the whole point is to break down the cartilage in the bones so that you've got this nice collagen-rich broth, so that it's almost, well, it's definitely thicker than a regular chicken broth that you would think of. And in fact, when you put it in the refrigerator to cool down and store it until later, when you come back for it, often it's a thick, almost like a beefy jello, which looks weird, but it's full of all kinds of amazing nutrition. That collagen is good for your gut health, for your joints, for your bones, for your hair, for your teeth, for your skin. It's really, really a fantastic thing to have into your diet. So the more jello, the better, basically. The great thing about using the Instant Pot is that you can make bone broth in as little as 90 minutes, depending on your recipe, and still get all the amazing benefits of that extended cook time. It's the way the Instant Pot works. So if you're anything like me, and feel uncomfortable about leaving something cooking on your stove for 2 or 3 days at a time, the Instant Pot will be your best friend in this endeavor. A note about bones: basically you can use any kind of animal bone to make bone broth. So chicken, beef, veal, lamb, doesn't matter. You can even use fish to make fish bones to make bone broth. You can get your bones from just left over from cooking. So if you roast a chicken, say, you can save the bones, just put them in a Ziploc bag, throw them in your freezer to use later. You can ask a butcher for bones. You can get them online from specialty stores. It's not hard to find bones anymore because it has been such a trend to consume bone broth. A note about the kind of bones that you want. Bone broth works best when you use bones made that have lots of connective tissue on them. So things like necks and backs and knuckles, that sort of thing. The mixture of those kind of bones work best. But again, you can use whatever bones you have. Today we're going to be using beef marrow bones because that's what I had in my freezer, and in the spirit of quarantine and trying not to go to the grocery store very often, I am making this recipe with only what I had on hand today when I decided to make this video. So the marrow bones are great bones to use. It doesn't tend to gel as much, so don't panic if when you make your bone broth it doesn't gel. It won't have as much collagen in it, but it's still full of all kinds of great nutrition, so don't panic. But if you have the option to use bones, like I said, chicken feet or knuckles, necks, backs, that kind of thing. That kind of bone is going to really give you that good gelatinous texture to your broth. So before we head to the kitchen, let me just tell you a note about some resources that the St. Johns County Public Library System has, and then we'll be on our way. So I've laid out on my table just a few resources that I got from the library to learn about bone broth, and these are just some of the books that I used in my journey of learning about the benefits to gut health. The library has a lot of information, a lot of different books that you can get about broths and stocks and gut health, that sort of thing. I'm also going to recommend one of our databases on our website. So if you go to SJCPLS.org and then choose the e-library tab that's up towards the top right corner, and then choose databases, you'll get a nice long list of different databases, and there's one called Gale Health and Wellness. And if you click on that, put in your library card number, and then search bone broth, you will get a wealth of information about the benefits of bone broth and all kinds of information. So I highly recommend it. It's much better than just randomly searching things on the internet, because things on our databases are vetted, so you know you can trust this information. We are going to be using this cookbook to make our bone broth, the Nutrient Dense Kitchen. I love this cookbook, and I need to return it because I think somebody else is waiting for it. So I'm going to head to the kitchen, we'll make our bone broth, and then I'll return the book to the library today, I promise. These first two steps are actually optional, but let me explain why I'm doing this. So the bones I'm using for this batch will be bones that I actually purchased specifically for making broth from a brand called Wild Fork Foods. You can order them online and they'll deliver them to your house. It's about 3 pounds in the bag, and they have different kinds of bones that you can buy. As even within the beef, these are beef split marrow bones, but they also sell beef neck bones, and the different kinds of bones, as I mentioned earlier, give you different flavors and different nutritional benefits. So I'm gonna put this bag to the side so it's not on my stove anymore, but I'm gonna keep the bag because when we're done making the broth, you can actually usually reuse the bones 1 or 2 more times. So I'm going to keep that bag, and that way I can refreeze these bones if I want. But this was the first time this was a brand new bag basically. So I blanched the bones first. So I just basically put all of these bones into a pot of boiling water and boiled them for 10 to 15 minutes. And that just helps to remove any impurities, so it makes for a tastier broth. And now I'm going to just take them from the pot and put them on a pan here, and we're going to roast them for about 30 minutes on 450. And usually after about 20 minutes, I'll flip them over and just so that they evenly cook. And you know, that it maybe needs 30 minutes, maybe 35 minutes, but this just adds a richer flavor to your broth. It makes it tastier. But if you are using bones that, say you cooked a chicken, you roasted a chicken, and you saved your bones from that chicken, you don't need to roast the bones again because it's already been roasted. So basically I'm just going to go ahead, put these in my oven at 450 for about 30 minutes, and I'll press pause here and we'll come back to the next step. Okay, so we've taken the bones out of the oven. They're nice and brown. I let them cool off. So I'm going to go ahead and put these into my Instapot. Now this is the Instapot that I have. To be honest with you, I can't really tell you that much about it. I know there's a bunch of different kinds on the, that they sell. So it doesn't matter what kind of Instant Pot you have. You just need to have an Instant Pot for this recipe. So I'm going to go ahead and take the lid off and throw in these bones. And I'm not sure if I mentioned this earlier or not, but these bones have a bunch of meat still stuck on them. Kind of freaks me out a little bit, but to be honest with you, that's the good stuff. This is what's going to help create the extra gelatinous collagen that you need, which is part of the point of eating bone broth. So I'm going to put all these in here. And then I'm just going to go ahead and pour in whatever this oily stuff that came out of cooking them, roasting them, into the pot. Okay. And then the next most important step is to put some apple cider vinegar into the pot. The apple cider vinegar actually helps pull the nutrients out of the bones while it's cooking. It's got a nice sizzle going. I'd already turned it on to let it start warming up. Okay. And then I'm going to put a bay leaf in there. Now, the recipe that I'm using from the Nutrient Dense cookbook says to leave it there and just throw in some water. But I do like to add some vegetables. I've chopped up an onion and some carrots and some garlic. I didn't go crazy chopping anything because this is all going to get strained out when it's all through. But I'm just going to go ahead and pour that on top. You can use whatever you have on hand, celery. I meant to cut some rosemary from my backyard, but I forgot. So this is just going to do it without it. I'm not putting salt in here though, because if later I'm using this bone broth for a recipe, you want to be able to control the salt level for the recipe. So you can add the salt later, but you don't want it in there now. Okay, so now I've got this beautiful pitcher of water. My mother-in-law made this pitcher. And I'm going to just fill it up to the fill line. And looks like I need a little bit more water. So my handy dandy filmer is just going to film what that looks like in there while I get some more filtered water. And you can use whatever kind of water you want to use. I just use filtered water because, all right. So now we're here at the fill line, and here's the best part. You put the lid on, maybe. There we go, and get it to close. I'm gonna go ahead and add 2 more minutes. Not. Okay, so it's going to cook for an hour and 28 minutes, and we'll just leave it there for now, and I'll see you in a little bit. Okay, we're back. So 90 minutes has passed, and the bone broth is ready to strain. But before I do that, I'm just going to recap because it was a little loud when I was using the cooker. It was steaming pretty loudly. So just to recap, I put 3 pounds of bones into the Instant Pot. I added a bay leaf, 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar, and filled the water to the fill line. I also personally added onions, garlic, and carrots because that's what I had on hand. You could also add celery, any fresh herbs. I can't have black pepper, but you can put black pepper in there, that would taste good. And we cooked it on the high setting for 90 minutes. The 90 minutes has passed, it's cooled down a little bit, so we're gonna go ahead and, oh, there we go. So looky there. Can you see in there? Looks good. It's probably pretty hot, so I'm gonna put my gloves on. And just lift this out. Bring it over to the sink. And I've got a nice bowl that I'm gonna strain this into. So I'll let some of this pour in. Okay. All right, I'm gonna set this to the side. After it cools down a little bit, I'm gonna go ahead and pick these bones out, like I mentioned earlier. I saved my bag so I can just, when they cool down, I'll rinse them off and I'll refreeze the bones and reuse it for at least another batch of bone broth, possibly even 2. If you use chicken bones, more than likely you'll only get that one use, but you might get a second batch out of the chicken bones, but they're definitely softer. Basically any bone that is still held together you can reuse, and it's okay to refreeze them. So I'm just gonna set this aside. You can look at this nice giant thing of broth here that we have. It smells pretty pungent, which is a good thing. That means it's a good batch. So I'm gonna let this cool off for just a second, and then I'm going to be putting it into mason jars. I'll put into the refrigerator about a week's worth of bone broth, and anything that I can't eat in a week I'll go ahead and freeze. So you can either put those in mason jars in the freezer, or you can put them on in Ziploc bags and freeze them flat, or even put them in ice cube trays and just have little portions and freeze it that way. So we'll be back in just a second. Thanks so much for joining me for this premiere video in the In the Bubble with Beth series, this is the first video I've ever done, so thanks for being patient with me. But I'll be back every Thursday through July with all new content. If you enjoyed this video, please feel free to like it, comment on it, and share it with your friends. And also be sure to check out all the other wonderful videos that the St. Johns County Public Library System has been posting on our Facebook page and also on our YouTube channel. Also, if you haven't already done so, you should download the Read Squared app, because we have all kinds of fantastic things going on this summer with the Adult Summer Reading Contest. And if you need more information, please call your local library and we'll be happy to share that. And if you are watching this video to get the secret code, please stand by. And now, the moment you've been waiting for, the secret word. Today's secret word is together 04. Together 04. Thank you again so much for joining me. I had a good time and I hope you did too, and I hope we see you at the library. Have a great day.